You may not be aware, but we are in a bit of transition in our church, and we're going to be talking about that today. I'm going to be retiring at the end of June, and I decided that this would be my sermon where I give you my thoughts on the future of the church, as well as some stuff about the history of the church. And after that, the decision-making process does leave my purview. As a retiring minister, it is essential and is taught to us from day one that you get out of the way when you retire. It doesn't mean you'll never see me, but I will not be doing any leadership positions whatsoever here, and I will not be guiding the discussion or giving inputs as to where the church should go in the future. So the first thing to keep in mind is this really is like turning a page to a new chapter. And it can be a little bit scary, but it should also be very exciting because you're going to be determining where you go from here. And this church has existed for almost 60 years, beginning with a group of people who met in a home back in 1958 to have discussions. They weren't Unitarian Universalists at the time. In fact, Unitarian Universalists didn't exist at the time. That took a few more years before those two denominations merged. So initially they were Unitarians. And one of the big questions coming up for this church is, do we seek to get another part-time minister, as I've been, quarter-time, or do we be what is known as a lay-led congregation? Meaning we're not going to have any ordained minister in our church, we're just going to be led by the people. And to give you a little perspective, historically, here's how this church has functioned. For its first 15 years of existence, there was no minister. After that, Don Mayle, whose picture is back there on the wall, had retired from the base out here, went to Vanderbilt Divinity School, got ordained, and served as the minister for 24 years here. When he retired, there was a 5-year period again where there was no minister. And then a sort of an on and off thing where we went through a series of part-time ministers or consultants or advisors or whatever you want to call them. I don't know some of these people because it was before my time, but Kelly Kaufman was a Vanderbilt Divinity student, and she was a part-time minister from 2002 to 2004. Then there was a year without a minister again. Then a consultant, Tricia Gardner, who was also from Vanderbilt Divinity School, came in, but she made it a point to say, I'm a consultant, not a minister. And she conducted an appreciative inquiry, which is something I'll talk about a little bit more in the future. It's something we may want to do as a congregation again, where you have someone come in and lead a multiple hour, like 6-hour or all-day session, where you're really working hard on what's our vision, where do we want to go, what sort of things do we want to see in the church. She did that back in 2006. 2007 and 8, Stan Bumgarner, who many of you have at least heard speak because he still comes back occasionally, spoke twice a month and attended board meetings and served in an advisory role, but again, he was not a minister. And although sometimes we call him a part-time minister, it was a little bit different, and he was paid each Sunday he came, so it wasn't a ongoing thing in the sense that he was on a contract or anything. And then finally in 2009 I became the lay minister, and about 5 years ago in June I was ordained after I finished seminary and have been the minister, and so we'll retire at about 9.5 years. So that's the history. You can see that this congregation has been in both worlds, with a minister, without a minister, with part-time ministers, consultants, advisors, etc. They've run the gamut. And now that decision is going to fall to our new board, which you will be electing at the end of this service, in fact. They, with input from all of you, are going to have to determine the path ahead. And I want to talk a little bit about that right now, give you my perspectives. First of all, I want to say, as a visitor here, way back over 10 years ago, this was very important to me. It was a truly life-changing moment in my life because I was going to be retiring soon from the military, and the last thing I thought I was going to do was become a minister or indeed ever attend a church again. And you've heard my story, those of you who've been around leaving fundamentalism, not going to church, but coming here and seeing that church could be something completely different, where you're not told what to believe, but rather encouraged to explore. that was vital and critical to me. And to this day, this is truly the only congregation in this area that does that. Others encourage you to explore within the context of a certain denomination. Even the most liberal Christian churches still encourage you to explore, but stay within Christianity in some way, shape, or form. Here, you're encouraged to explore whatever. You can explore a religious philosophy of life. You can be an atheist or an agnostic. You can explore Far Eastern religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever. You're encouraged to find something that is meaningful in your life, but you can still come here and talk about it and not have others say, no, that's wrong. Here's how you're supposed to think. That's why this church matters. That's why what happens in the future, the next 10 years, the next 100 years, whatever, that's why this place matters. And that's why it's essential that this congregation change the mindset a little bit, because when you have a minister, a lot of stuff falls on the minister. I do a lot of stuff you don't even know I do. But those things are now going to have to be done by you. And that means you have to step up. When that call goes out and says, we need someone to do this, you can't just shrug it, well, someone else will do it. Maybe you're the one who needs to do it. Open your mind to new possibilities of serving in this congregation. The new board needs you to be involved. The president, Charity, is not your new minister. She doesn't function like a minister. All things don't fall on Charity. Charity is the one who presides at the board meeting and helps things to get done, but she's not paid. She's not expected to be the one who goes to the hospital when you're sick, or to do the services if someone dies or gets married. And she's not the one that does all the odd jobs, because that's what the minister used to do. So I cannot emphasize enough, this is now so much more a team effort. Not to say it hasn't been in the past, but so much more now. You all need to be involved very much, because what we do here matters. That's the emphasis today. What we do here matters. We have something special to offer this community. Keep it going strong. Today we have 45 people. You know, that's a good turnout for this congregation. And we're missing some regulars today. You know, we could easily have been over 50. The congregation is strong and has been growing. So we need to keep that going. First of all, we need to ask ourselves, do we want to grow as a congregation? This question of growth comes up all the time. And there's two things you can look at when you're talking about growth. Is one, we need to get more people, so they get more money, so we can hire a half-time minister or a three-quarters-time minister, or maybe one day get a full-time minister. And that only happens if you have a larger congregation. But growth, just to do that, isn't the right reason to grow. As helpful as that may sound, that's not why you try to grow. You grow because you offer something important, and other people find it important, and they want to come here because it's meaningful in their lives, and it helps them to find a path in this confusing and wacky world that we live in. Increasingly confusing and wacky. As life goes on, it's just mind-blowingly weird. We need some place to get grounded. Let this be that place. So growth should come if we're doing things that matter, not so that we can hire a half-time or more minister, not so that we can get a bigger building, not so that we can get a bigger budget. Growth only matters if you're doing it for the right reason. That's what I would maintain anyhow. The second thing is, what are we striving for? What is our mission? What is our vision for the congregation? Now, I've had a vision and a mission during my time here. My vision and mission was that when someone stands up here at the pulpit and speaks to you, they challenge you. They make you think, but they also challenge you in how you live. That they give you things and perspectives to ponder and question in your own life, so that your life is more meaningful, more humane, more helpful, whatever word you want to use. If we're just coming up here and giving fluff sermons that are 10 minutes long, and this happens in a lot of churches, and everything else is what matters. The music and the ceremony and the rituals are what's important, and then the sermon is almost a tag on. And that happens in a lot of places. I look at it exactly the opposite, probably to an extreme. The sermon is what matters, and everything else is irrelevant. I mean, that's not true, but that's sort of how I think. The sermon has to be important. It has to be good. The other stuff doesn't carry you through the week. It doesn't challenge you how to live, at least in my life. Now, I'm guilty of putting my perspective on others. To some people, music can be truly powerful and inspirational. The joys and concerns, the chalice lighting, all the other things we do are important. And for some people, maybe more important than I can imagine. But at least my vision was that we come here and have challenging, intellectually stimulating, spiritually motivating sermons. And that our speakers are really striving to help us in this weird and wacky world we live in. And that we are forced to question our assumptions and everything we do. Things so basic as, how do I earn my living? What do I eat? How do I interact with other people? On and on and on it goes. There's so many things we can look at more closely. That was my mission and vision, was to create a place where that happens. And I think we've done that here. And the discussion in the second hour is part of that. That you don't just hear something and go home as though that was the truth, but rather now you ask questions, give your own perspectives. So those are important things that we have to offer. So once I retire, you're going to have to come up with your own vision and mission. Does it change? It might. And you're not going to hurt my feelings. Whatever changes you make, I can assure you, it's not going to hurt my feelings if you do something differently. It's like, well, Doug will be offended because he did this way for 10 years, and how can we change it? No, change it. If it's what you want to do, please change it. Have a vision, have a mission, have goals, and work towards them. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the two options you face of being a lay-led congregation or a congregation with an ordained minister. If you are lay-led, the church is led by the laity, L-A-I-T-Y. That's a rather snobbish term that means all those of you who aren't ordained. It's almost insulting. A lay minister, not a real minister, a lay minister. So you can get away from that if you want and say congregational led. Setting aside all this elitism of this term of lay led, what is it to be congregationally led? First of all, as I've said, no one on the board functions as a minister, especially the president. That's not the role. And don't try to put that on her. That's not fair, and it's not what she signed up for. This is a team effort now. Nothing is more important to keep in mind that if you go this route and not have a minister, everyone's got to step up. There's a lot of stuff to be done, and that responsibility's got to be shared. Secondly, when these responsibilities are announced, when these options come open for you, once again, I'm going to encourage you, ask yourself seriously, can I do this? Also consider, am I biting off too much? Sometimes people get so enthused about helping out, they take on too much and can't do it well. So you do have to balance and make sure you are not taking on too much and that others might be able to help out. Being a congregation without a minister means sometimes you're going to have to go outside for help too. None of you, as far as I know, well, maybe there are a couple that can perform weddings. And there are ways you can do that without having an ordained minister. You're going to want to set some people up who can do that from this congregation. You're going to try to figure out who's going to lead a service when someone dies. Is it going to be someone from the congregation? And are they going to get some training for that? There's no legal requirement. Anyone can do it, but you need to figure out how you're going to do that. Or are you going to bring someone in from the outside who is ordained and has some relationship with our congregation? On the other hand, if you decide to try to hire another minister, you have to remember these things. Right now, My salary is a fair salary for a quarter-time minister. You have stepped up and provided enough through giving to meet what would be considered fair compensation by the Unitarian Universalist Association. They actually put out charts based on where you live, how much years of experience you have, and whether you're quarter, half, or full-time. And based on that, you are capable of paying a quarter-time minister a fair salary with one caveat. I don't get paid for health insurance, and I don't get any money towards a retirement fund. And those would be expected for someone else, unless someone comes in and says, I don't need those things. Now, obviously, you can negotiate any kind of a deal with anyone, but it's going to be hard to get a quarter-time minister to come in here through what we call the search process. It's a very long, painful process that the Unitarian Universalists have. I won't go into details. Be thankful you don't have to do it, because it's long, it's expensive, and it's usually done for full-time ministers, maybe half-time. They don't do it for quarter-time. So you're going to have few options on a quarter-time minister, but you do have some possibilities, and that's something the new board will have to work on if they want to go that route. The other thing to keep in mind is quarter-time ministry is very different from full-time ministry. I'm going to read a little passage from a blog called Peace Bang. This is from a Unitarian Universalist minister, and it's entitled, Dear Unitarian Universalist Search Committees. This is a committee that's going into this long, painful search process. It's written by Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. Dear Search Committee, and these are questions that people often expect to ask ministers and expect ministers to deal with. So these are some things to think about if you're going the minister route again. Dear Search Committee, a minister cannot grow your congregation. Only the congregation can do that. If you pose that question to your candidate, this is someone who's going to be a possible minister at your church, you call them in, they're called a candidate. I hope the candidate asks you the same question. What is the congregation doing to share its ministry outside its walls? What is the congregation doing within the church to promote fellowship, meeting new people, integrating them into the life of the congregation, creating meaningful relationships, sharing spiritual growth? Some of this happens through programs and the work of professionals. If I was in search, I would want to hear how, but mostly I want to hear an honest assessment of the lay people's ethos of hospitality and evangelism. If it's lacking, that's okay. It's important to know. It's not unusual and it's not a crime, but it's essential that all who love the church know that its health and vibrancy and growth is the work of all who minister. And that's everyone, not just the ordained. And then another paragraph from her blog. Let me speak some truth to you about the work of ministry. There is no such thing as 2/3 or 3/4 time ministry, or I would add, quarter-time ministry. It's a mythical beast, somewhat akin to the Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster. Ministry means being available when people need you, and it is therefore impossible to carve out a week with clearly delineated time on and time off. For example, Fridays are my day off. Does that mean I am to ignore all responses to phone calls or emails, even if I sent them out on a Wednesday when I was working? Am I to expect that my church staff and everyone else cool their heels while I ignore everything for a day? What about the person who is in pain and reaches out? I respond. What about the ministry team that meets on Fridays and needs the minister to attend and support them? Because I am employed full-time with full benefits, vacation time, and an extremely supportive staff, I can swap days off to meet the needs of the congregation and my own schedule. A part-time minister has a much harder time accomplishing this and winds up giving many extra hours of unpaid labor. I will also add that if you have a quarter-time minister who doesn't live in the community, that makes it even harder, and that's almost certainly what will happen with any options we've been able to think of. None of them live here, and living in the community makes a difference. So it's still going to be a different world, even if you do bring in another quarter-time minister. Don't expect a minister to be somebody who grows the church. That's your job. And figuring out how a minister functions as quarter time is tricky. It's never been an issue for me because no one's ever made me punch a clock. But I think it's fair to say you probably got more than quarter time out of me. And I don't know what kind of deal you're going to work with the next minister. But you need to be flexible. A few questions have come up since I announced my retirement, so I just want to address those quickly. Are you moving? No, I'm not. Someone was concerned that we were actually leaving. Someone thought I was going to go to Japan and study Zen there. No, I am staying here. I have no plans on moving. Jancy has her parents here. I have my parents here. We have 7 dogs. It's a huge hassle to move. Yeah, and of course Courtney's here, so I can't move because she's down here doing this. Will we still see you at church? Yes, but I will still be speaking at other churches as I have for many years. So at most you'll see me periodically. But, you know, I still am going to earn a little bit of money, at least as a speaker, but not as a minister at the other 2 churches where I speak regularly, because they don't have ministers at all. Will I still speak here? Not for the rest of 2018. I've already told Will that. And afterwards, it's going to depend on whether there's another minister here or not, and whether the other minister wants the old minister speaking. Many do not. You know, it's their church. I need to get out of the way. So we'll see what happens. And finally, what jobs have I been doing that I'm not going to do anymore that other people are going to have to pick up? A big one, really big one, and very important, and the one you don't usually see me do, is the eBay and Facebook sales of items, high-value items or higher-value items that people have brought in, or sometimes when people donate furniture and such. We don't bring it into the yard sale unless it's yard sale time, so it goes into Jancy's dad's garage. He's been storing stuff for you for years, so you probably should send him a thank you note at some point. And I post stuff on Craigslist and Facebook and eBay, and I sell stuff. I've probably sold a couple hundred books that we have high-value books, and or at least, you know, $10, a little bit here, a little bit there. So that's one of the things I've done on the side. I'm not going to do that anymore. Someone else could pick that up. That's part of our fundraising. It's a big part of our fundraising. And if someone has an empty garage or something where they can store stuff, even better. Yes?
I may have an empty building and I would be willing to help with that if somebody would teach me.
There you go. And I can certainly teach you. But she's going to need help moving stuff too. So, well, that's something for the board to consider. And of course, I'll tell everyone, you know, how I did it. And it's not that hard to get it set up, but it's something you just have to stick with. Visiting people in the hospital and calling those who are sick. Anyone can do that. Someone's going to need to do that. Running events at the retreat, which we've always called on people to do anyway, but you know, when that retreat committee announcement goes out and says we need people to help us prepare for the retreat, that's something anyone can do. Put your hand up, come out and help. Think of something now that you could present at the retreat for 15 or 30 minutes. Some little activity you could show others how to do, a craft, or maybe you know, we've had all sorts of things done. Let your imagination run wild. Speaking on Sundays. Some of you haven't spoken yet. Everyone takes a turn up here, almost everyone. And if you haven't yet, start thinking about something you'd like to share and spend 20 minutes up here speaking. That is part of how we function. We cannot pay speakers to come in every Sunday. So we have to step up as a congregation and fill the pulpit. So when the call goes out for speakers, don't be shy. Take a turn. And finally, serving on the board. It's been difficult to get 7 people to want to serve on the board every year. Some years easier than others, and we've always managed to do it. But when that call goes out in future years that we need board members, think long and hard. Give it a shot. Help out. It's got to be done. It doesn't happen in a void.
Again, is there anything that tells you what each one of those positions
Yes,
does?
we have job descriptions for all the board members, and I can we'll put that out. I mean, this year's done, but next year we'll send out that list of descriptions, sure. Or I assume they would. I won't be doing it. But I would recommend the board do that next time. Finally, and most importantly, I have to touch on a rarely discussed truth about ministry. When a minister retires, that minister is expected, at the very least, to keep a very, very low profile. Mostly, that minister is expected to leave. Now, I don't have anywhere else to go, so I'm not leaving, but I am keeping a very, very low profile. I will not be in a leadership position of any sort ever once I retire, because it's almost unethical to do it. The minister has to back out. And that's what happens when you become a minister from within your own congregation. That's why it's usually not encouraged, because when it comes time to leave, you need to leave, or at least get out of the way. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm not doing anything behind the scenes other than some physical stuff to help out, like maintaining the website, which I'll still do, and sending out announcements on who's speaking each week, that sort of thing. But as far as decision making and leadership, I will not be involved. And just to show you how extreme this can get, I heard a story just a few weeks ago about a very well-known UU minister, very well-liked, who had finally come to the end of his ministry, and in his retirement, deal, I guess that's a good word, there's a more formal word, the retirement deal, he was told he would never attend the church again and would move away and never come back to the town. And this wasn't because of any criminal activity. It's just, you need to go away now. Now, I guess there were some people who had some hard feelings, but when the new minister comes in, the last thing that minister wants is the ghost of the old minister floating around, or the living embodiment of the old minister floating around. They don't need that second guessing. They don't need the people in the congregation going, well, Doug never did this. Maybe we should ask Doug to come. Don't ask Doug to come back. Doug's not coming back. So you're going to have to figure it out. And I am not going to be the one anyone comes to and says, we don't like this new minister. Don't talk to me. Talk to the minister. I cannot tell you how strongly I am going to stay out of the way of any new minister and give them my full blessing and support. Whoever it is, doesn't matter. And that's not going to happen. So be supportive of whoever you bring in if you bring someone in. And so this is not, this can almost give you a sense of abandonment. Doug's leaving us, Doug doesn't like us anymore, whatever. None of that is true. It's what happens when a minister retires. And I have to be ethical in my behavior as a retired minister. So that's what I'm up to. So this is my final point. Beginning July 1st, when the new board takes over, when I'm gone as the minister, you are really starting a new chapter in a very long and almost 60-year story of this congregation. Things will be different, but that doesn't mean things have to be scary, and that you shouldn't be disappointed about change. Change comes all the time. That is the essence of life. And so you're going to have a big change, but that doesn't have to be bad, scary, or anything else. It can be good, exciting, and filled with promise and opportunity. Leadership and responsibility is going to be shared amongst all of you. It requires you all work together and live in a covenant with each other. And that's my final thing. We have a covenant, unspoken mostly, that when you come here, you treat each other with love and respect. It doesn't mean everyone's your best friend. What it means is, when we're here, we support each other. We treat each other with decency. We listen to what they have to say. We don't have to agree, but we listen. And we function in a way that we support each other and make this place possible. And so in July, it's going to be a different dynamic. But I hope that each and every one of you approach this with a feeling of excitement and determination, because I cannot emphasize enough, we have something vital to offer this community, and I hope that we continue to offer it as long as there is such a thing as a church and such a thing as Tullahoma and Manchester and Winchester and Lynchburg and Fayetteville and all the places people come from Shelbyville, or Shepville, to pronounce it correctly.
Yes.
All those places from whence you come, they come here for a purpose. Let's keep that purpose strong and vibrant. And I know I'm turning it over to people who care, and it's going to be in good hands.